Hey everyone, welcome to Judging for the Win. I'm Dave, and this is my daily ruling. Nick plays a dress down on Amy's turn. In response, Amy targets her Nadu 2 times with some ability. During the end step, after Nick sacrifices dress down, Amy targets her Nadu again. Does the Nadu ability trigger? Okay, so if you're just here for the answer, I have some bad news for you, which is that I don't know what the correct answer to this question is, because it doesn't exist yet. That's why I didn't make this video 2 months ago when this question first came up. I was hoping that I could find something if I researched hard enough, or else that Wizards of the Coast would acknowledge the situation by changing the CR, or at least issuing a ruling. But here I am, no closer to a ruling than when MH3 actually came out, so I cannot give you a definitive answer. I'll try to do the next best thing though. This video will explain what the problem is, why it never came up before, and even a little bit of background on where official rulings come from in the first place. Ready? Let's get started. So let's start out with some discussion about the situation from a rules perspective. After the dress down is in play, there are going to be 2 continuous effects that apply to all of Amy's creatures. The one from Nadu wants to give them all an ability, and the one from dress down wants to take away all of their abilities. Both of these apply in layer 6, but because applying dress down's effect first changes whether the Nadu effect exists, we say that the Nadu effect depends on dress down, and for that reason, dress down will always apply first, regardless of the order that these 2 permanents enter the battlefield. Therefore, after dress down enters, none of Amy's creatures will have the Nadu ability. After dress down leaves the battlefield, Nadu will resume giving Amy's creatures its ability, but it's not obvious whether Nadu is giving those creatures a new instance of the same ability, in which case the twice per turn cap would be reset, or whether the creatures are just regaining the same instance of that ability that they had formerly, in which case it would not. There is no rule in the comprehensive rules that addresses this issue, nor has any ruling been made by any official source. Now, I want to make sure that everyone understands exactly what the core problematic case is. There are a lot of similar situations that do have a definitive answer. And to really get a good handle on this question, it's important to appreciate what makes this one different. It's a little bit subtle, so I'll build up to the situation from the original problem statement gradually. First off, let's say that you have 2 Nadus in play because you have like a mirror gallery or something. All of your creatures would then have 2 instances of the Nadu ability, one from each of them. Each instance of this ability would function independently, meaning that, for instance, each one would have a separate counter for the twice per turn cap. And if one of the Nadus was removed, all the creatures would lose its ability but retain the other one, with no effect on the twice per turn limit, regardless of how many times either ability had triggered that turn. Next step up in difficulty, let's say that you had 1 Nadu in play and then you cast a second one. When the legend rule kicks in, you would choose to keep the one that you just played. In that case, your twice per turn limits would all reset. This is literally exactly the same scenario as the previous example, just with a different explanation for why one of the Nadus left the battlefield. If you instead kept the old Nadu, that would have no effect on the twice per turn limit because all of your creatures would still have the same instance of the Nadu ability that they did originally. Well, what about if you did the same thing, except that you don't have both the Nadus out at the same time? You just had the first one die, and then after that you played a second one. We're starting to get a little bit more interesting here. There's no specific rule that says this, but common sense dictates that a different source for that ability would imply that your creatures have a different instance of the Nadu ability, even though they both have the same exact text. There is an official ruling in the Gatherer that backs up this view, so I'm comfortable calling this the correct ruling with no qualifiers, even if there might not be any specific rule in the CR that says this is right. Okay, spicing things up again, let's say you have 1 Nadu and you cast a flicker on it. When the Nadu returns to the battlefield, it's considered a brand new object with no connection to its previous self. Therefore, the answer to this scenario would be exactly the same as the previous one, even though there's no point in time where your creatures had 2 instances of the Nadu ability. And indeed, there was a brief period of time during the resolution of Flicker where they had no abilities from Nadu at all. Now let's focus on the dress down aspect instead for a minute. If you had a homicide investigator that had already triggered, and then you played a dress down, the homicide investigator would not trigger even if another creature dies after dress down is sacrificed that turn. This is because it still has the same ability before and after dress down applies. Unlike permanents, there's no rule that says if an ability leaves and comes back, it counts as a new ability. So thus far, all of the rulings discussed have had answers that are adequately supported by the CR, or at least by relevant case law. But let's take a look at what makes the one described in the original problem statement unique. Nadu is unlike Homicide Investigator in that the ability that lets you reveal the top card of your library isn't inherently part of Nadu. Rather, there is an ability that is actually printed on Nadu that gives that ability to all your creatures. If the origin ability is somehow interrupted, it's unclear whether it will grant the same triggered ability afterwards or a different one. Now, I mentioned that some rulings don't come from the CR, but from case law. In other words, from looking at how similar situations are handled and using that to inform what the philosophy surrounding those rulings should be, and then using that philosophy that was developed to guide us to a placeholder answer. This process may seem somewhat strange to Magic players, as we don't need to rely on it very often, but many other games make much more use of this kind of ruling. Unfortunately, case law isn't very helpful for us here because it doesn't paint a clear picture of what the answer should be. For example, last week I had a video where I talked about how Agatha's Soul Cauldron and Shifting Woodland interact. And a key part of that ruling was the point that if you gain, lose, and then regain the same set of linked abilities, the new instances of those abilities will not be linked to any other abilities, including ones that the permanent may have had in the past. This isn't conclusive for this ruling because there aren't any linked abilities in the Nadu case, but it does point to the idea that the situation from the original problem statement should reset the cap. On the other hand, if you look at the section on counters, counters with the same name are all fungible, which means that any individual instance of a +1/+1 counter works the same as any other, by which logic it seems that the ability would be the same. Although I think that if you took a +1/+1 counter off a creature and put another one on it, most people probably would not say that it was the same +1/+1 counter, which points in the opposite direction. So a lot of the time, looking at things this way can lead to a clear philosophy that the rules team has tried to uniformly implement across many game concepts. But as you can see, it's a little iffier here. In cases like this, another thing that can help is sometimes Wizards will see the situation and issue an official ruling. Sometimes this will be in the release notes for one of the affected cards, which are compiled together into Gatherer rulings. But a lot of the time, it will happen after the set is released, and those rulings are typically communicated via the personal Twitter account of the rules manager or another authorized internet representative. I wish I was making this up, but that's how it is. I have no idea why these official rulings can't be promulgated through a more official channel, such as, I don't know, the Wizards website. But the fact is, a lot of Magic rulings can be found on the rules manager's Twitter account. Now, at this point, I'd like to beg something of my followers. Please, 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 do not mob the rules manager's Twitter or other social media with this question. A little empathy is all you would need to see why this is a bad idea. Look how many views this video has, and imagine that even a small fraction of that number of people DM'd you about the same question all on the same day. If this issue gets enough attention, a fix will happen, as witnessed by my videos about Henzi Tor, Sarah Paragon, and most recently Wheel of Potential, all of which were fixed in due course. So if you really want to make sure this issue gets addressed, just share this video. And while you're at it, you might as well subscribe to my channel and, hey, hit the bell icon. Honestly, I'm kind of surprised this hasn't come up yet. I mean, it's not like these are two junk rares that never see competitive play. It's literally the most played card in Modern and a commonly played sideboard option against that deck. So I'm certain that once this issue gets some publicity, an official answer will come soon. Check the pinned comment if you're watching this in the future. For now, I'll close out with my thoughts on what the answer should be and what we might see change in the rules to address this. Honestly, when I was thinking about this situation, I waffled back and forth a few times regarding what I felt was the most intuitive answer. I ended up with the opinion that if Nadu is still the same object, its ability that gives itself should not reset. And the same reasoning would hold for any of Amy's other creatures. If it's the same creature and the same Nadu giving the ability, it doesn't matter if the creature stopped having that ability for a while. Nadu should be giving it the same instance of that ability, so the twice per turn limit would not reset. The answer would apply in other related cases, like if you were to lose control of Nadu and regain control of it, or if one of your creatures temporarily changed into a different card type. I'm told that this answer corresponds to how it works online, which is another point in its favor. Now, what would it take to resolve this issue for good? Well, an official ruling would be enough to answer this question, as well as similar ones with cards like Tyvar the Bellicose, but to be really satisfying, I'd like to see something written in the comprehensive rules to rigorously define what it means for an ability to be the same. Now, this is not as trivial of an ask as it might sound, though I expect that we might have to wait a while to see this if we even do get to see it at all. So, to see what I mean, let's consider this card here well rested. If you untapped the creature, and then managed to attach well rested to a different creature, and then moved it back to the original one and untapped it again, would you get another trigger? Well, based on what we said earlier with Nadu, the answer seems like it would be no, but it does kind of seem like we're giving this creature a new instance of the ability again, right? So maybe it feels like we should get another trigger. A lot of people that I talked with thought that changing an ability's timestamp should be sufficient to change its identity. But Bound by Moonsilver gets a new timestamp anytime it changes what it's attached to, so that would be very problematic to resolve if we tried to bring timestamps into this. Copy effects are another potential source of problems. Like if my Nadu became a copy of another Nadu, would that mean that everything would now be getting a different instance of the Nadu ability or not? I still haven't come up with a solution that I feel entirely satisfied with, but I think that if one object gives an ability to a second object, then the abilities on the second object have the same identity so long as both objects are the same and so long as no copy effects have started to apply on the object granting the ability. I feel like there might still be some more corner cases that don't work intuitively here, but I think that's kind of to be expected once you get this far into things. Definitely let me know in the comments if you have a clever solution to this issue. And that's all I have for you today. How did you do? Join me again next time for another daily ruling. Until then, I hope you have a great day.